Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, Adam, Caplan. Does it feel like spring to you all because the weather's finally nice? And maybe the most obvious indication that spring has sprung, Adam, is that OTAs for the Eagles have officially begun. At least the rookie camp one. They had their rookie camp this past weekend, if you want to call it. So they are officially the Eagles back on the field. That's always a good sign. It was nice to, see Nick Sirianni press conference, but I'll tell you what the nicest thing out of the whole thing was, and you're going to laugh when I say it, but it's true. We saw visual evidence of Sean Desai truly being the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. I was starting to wonder for a second there. I mean, are they ever going to put a microphone in front of this guy's face?
Yeah, well, he has to talk in training camp, but yeah, that's
a long way away.
I know. Maybe he may not talk till August or late July. Who knows? But yeah, so they got that started, and they got all their undrafted free agents signed, and boy, they have a very small class for whatever reason. They didn't sign a lot this year,
right?
But yeah, and what we're gonna do today's show is we're gonna go inside their defensive roster, some little nuggets we've got, by position, sort of roles that maybe we didn't discuss before for some of these guys, and also a veteran tight end signing.
A veteran tight gotta have. Now, I'm going to take a moment to lament the fact that there will be no Richard Rodgers, at least not as of yet, competing for a spot this spring for the first time in about 4 or 5 years. And as everyone knows, I'm a big Richard Rodgers fan, Dick Rod, as we like to call him. He is not on the 53rd. He's not on this off-season roster though, but somebody else is. So I guess I have to adopt a new favorite tight end. But hopefully, did Richard Rodgers play in the league last year after the Eagles?
Chargers, yeah,
he did.
That's
okay.
Why they couldn't resign. They couldn't bring him back late with the Chargers.
Right.
I don't know where he is now, but
so he played with Johnny Hightower last year, right?
Well, yeah, if Hightower was still there. Yeah, I don't know if he's still on the roster, but no, this one's interesting. Dan Arnold's a guy that is in the league. He's only in the league for one reason: he can run. Like he's a former college receiver. This is the trend. I remember talking to the Eagles about this after Antonio Gates became a stud. Obviously a former basketball player at Kent State. That was like the big thing in the league for like a decade. Okay, let's get a former basketball player who would be converted to a tight end in the NFL and play defensive end. A lot of teams tried. Very few of them ever worked. And then this kid, Dan Arnold, was a former college receiver at Wisconsin Platteville, and the guy could flat out fly. Like he's a slot tight end. He's not an inline tight end. So he basically will play the same position as Grant Calcaterra, and they'll go from there. See if he could push Calcaterra for the job. But Jack Stoll for wide tight end. That's certainly not changed.
Absolutely. And now it's funny you mentioned the basketball background that they look for, because one of their undrafted free agent signings that we did not go through in our last podcast that we will go through in this one has a basketball pedigree, just at a different position, not tight end. So we'll get into that as well as we start to weave our way through the offseason here and away from the NFL draft. Now, we have one of our most watched, most listened to Inside the Birds podcast. Well, not Intel with Greg Cosell podcasts ever. His final one of this season that he did with us last week. If you haven't checked it out, you might be living in a rock, because that one was well viewed and got a lot of great feedback. So, but if you haven't seen it yet, he went through every single draft pick with his breakdowns, and of course also the addition of DeAndre Swift and what that means for the Philadelphia Eagles. So make sure you check that out. Our Patreon subscribers, we will be doing soon our new function that we promised, which is doing video where we answer the questions. We've got a bunch of questions submitted, so we'll start answering those in a little bit. And of course, Adam has his Wednesday night chats on Discord with our subscribers. So trying to get as much content on Patreon for our paid subscribers as much as possible. If you haven't signed up yet, it's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. And we want to thank all of our new subscribers in the last 5 to 6 days who've hopped on aboard with us. And we hope you enjoy the content. We will probably, Adam, bring Greg back. I think we do an annual NFC East breakdown, and we usually get Greg in on that. We haven't scheduled it yet, and we don't know when it'll fit in the offseason calendar here, but I would imagine we'd be able to make that happen again.
Yeah. In fact, we might, depending on what our budget is, we might actually bring him back as well for do their opponents because the schedule's getting released this week, and then maybe
Right.
closer to the season, maybe when we get back from training camp and so forth, maybe late August, we'll preview the whole season with Greg and go over their whole schedule. And because there's no one better to do that, and he knows these teams inside and out, and it's always fun to hear what he thinks of the players around the league.
100%. And at some point, you and I will pretty soon, we'll probably do a maybe even the next podcast, we'll start to do our quite too early 53-man roster protection podcast. We'll do, one for offense, one for defense. And those are always some pretty popular ones this time of the year. Look forward to getting that together too. Remind everybody, Inside the Birds is powered by Ocean Casino Resort. They are the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. All right, Adam, I want to go back to what you said about Dan Arnold, because he's, like you said, he's sort of one of these tight ends who can fly, who can run, catch, not much of a blocker. What do they call those? Zebra tight ends in the old West Coast offense?
Yeah, he's a move tight end. Yeah, he would be a Z. He'd be a move tight end. He might be able to play the F position as well, but he's really not a blocker. So he's gonna be on the move. You're gonna free him up. He could run and he could jump. He was not drafted, by the way. The Saints signed him as an undrafted free agent in 2017, but the Eagles are now his 5th team in 6 years. So he just you kind of know what he is, and you can only use him a specific way. And that's is a guy's a detached tight end. Might line him up the X position as well. We've seen teams do that, line up tight ends, and the guy could fly. And look, the Eagles are going to be a passing offense. We know that.
Right.
Just a matter of how they want to deploy the talent, man. They've got so much talent on offense, man. The 17 team, as great as it was, the Eagles are better at certain positions. Obviously, at wide receiver, you got Zacchaeus in here now, who's a good slot tight end, a slot receiver, catch, certainly improved over the years. You got AJ Brown, who's an absolute superstar. Devontae Smith, who's a star in the making. Hurts has obviously made a big jump. Four outstanding offensive linemen. One, obviously, the right guard spots up. We get that, but this got the makings to have one of the best offensive Eagles ever put together.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Arnold is that he went from a guy his first 2 years in the league. You said he was with the Saints his first year. He caught like 12 balls. Then his next year, he's with the Saints and the Cardinals. He caught 8 balls total on 2 teams. So he looked like kind of a guy who was just a guy, right? And then 2020, he actually had 31. It's like he goes from a guy catching 8 to 10 balls to 31 catches for 438 yards, 4 touchdowns. And by the way, he averaged 14 yards per catch, which goes to your point on showing his ability to stretch a field. And then the next season, he was with both Carolina and Jacksonville, and he caught 35 balls for 408 yards. Almost that's crazy. Totally different, 2 different teams. At the end of the year, it's almost identical numbers, 35 catches, 408 yards. So what happens next year? Well, the Jaguars acquire Evan Ingram, and he sort of goes back to a guy catching just 9 passes for 135 yards. So he clearly has talent, and I like that the Eagles have armed themselves here with another pass catching tight. Like you said, they have a backup for Goddard in Stoll, like a Y guy, a guy who can catch, a guy who can block. They don't really have that. If you want to be 12 personnel, but you want to have just a pass catching tight end flexed in there, and Calcaterra is hurt or regresses or whatever, then you got Dan Arnold to give it the old college try. I mean, I imagine if he does all right in camp, he can come back on the practice squad and be there if he's needed.
Well, or he beats out Calcaterra, and Calcaterra gets cut, and if he's not
hard to see that happening, though, right? I mean, that would be a wild surprise to me.
Honestly, no, not at all.
No?
That was a 6th-round pick, right?
Yeah, but we said Calcaterra was a 6th-round pick not because of talent, because he had concussions, because he had retired, and then we saw some explosion in him last year. So,
remember when Goddard got hurt? We were like, wow, okay, they hit a couple really nice plays here, but Dan Arnold's a guy who's been in the league a long time. He could flat out run, man. To me, this is like, okay, let's see if Arnold could push him. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Arnold beat him out, but let's get these guys to training camp first and see what happens.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, with their uncertainty at slot, right, with Zacchaeus and with Quez Watkins, maybe there is room to sort of play this convert wide receiver tight end there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because quite frankly, the slot position has been underwhelming. Greg Ward was a nice story. There's no question about it. I mean, this is his 6th season with the Eagles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
look, but it's just not good enough. You're right, absolutely. There are ways to do that. I mean, there are ways to get around it, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe maybe use him in a couple ways, but he's certainly not an inline blocker. That's not his forte.
Right. All right, we are going to discuss today the defensive depth chart, and there were a couple of undrafted free agents who will add to that. We'll discuss them that we didn't go through last podcast, but I want to get to one of them who plays on offense that we were kind of alluding to earlier because he's not going to factor in here to the defensive depth chart discussion. And that is, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Chim Okorafor, who is a offensive lineman from the powerhouse known as Benedictine College, which he's there via Cal Poly Pomona and then Riverside Community College, Missouri Southern, and Pittsburgh State. Adam, this guy has played at every single small college you've never heard of. It's unbelievable.
And
right?
he
But
was a basketball player.
yes,
Earlier.
he was a basketball player his first 2 years, I believe, at Cal Poly Pomona. So is that, I know there's a Cal Poly San Obispo. That's where Chris Gokong went.
Yeah.
But that was in, I wonder if Pomona is just another satellite Cal Poly or if it had changed its name. I don't know.
I'm not sure, but he also, did you mention he was also Riverside City College?
Yes, Riverside Community College.
Okay,
Yes.
that's where he started. By the way, he turns 24 this week. So because of all the schools you said, yeah, he's a little older. Pittsburgh State, what current, you may not be with the team right now, but what veteran receiver went to Pittsburgh State?
I know this. I know it, but I can't. I can't. First of all, Pittsburgh State is in. It is not in Pittsburgh or in Pennsylvania, right?
Kansas
it's in like, where is it? Kansas?
Yeah.
I get for some reason I get this one confused with Frostburg State.
I don't know where they did. The only reason why I know, okay, it's John Brown. The only reason why is because I was at the East West Shrine game or waiting practices. I'm like, who is this guy? Pittsburgh State, because there's no H at the end. I'm like, Pittsburgh State.
And it's one T also, right? Isn't it?
It's two. It's two.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But I'm like, Pittsburgh. That's how I know the school. I never heard of it before.
It is Kansas, by the way. Good call on that. Do you know that? If you can name their mascot name, I'll be so impressed with you.
No idea.
I gotta tell you, this is an awesome mascot name, and I'm sort of surprised with all the animal mascot names.
Oh, I know it. No, I know it.
What is it?
Now you said it. Gorillas?
Yes, it's gorillas. I'm kind of surprised that that's not more prominent. The gorillas.
When you said the animal, because I had to look. Whenever John Brown came out for the draft, I had to look him up because he was getting so much steam for the draft.
Right.
This guy could fly. He should have been in the Senior Bowl and all this. I'm like, okay, let me look him up.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking up like Pittsburgh State, Kansas gorillas. So it's kind of cool. He put them on the map. No, he's been on and off Buffalo's roster. Smokey's his nickname. Good player. But getting back to Okorafor, yeah, no, it's you just bring the guy to camp, and he's obviously right now just a camp body. But Eagles like developing. Like Suapeto's a guy. He was an undrafted free agent in 19. He's been not a great story, but a good story in that he's been on and off the roster. That's a win for the scouting staff. And look, he's actually played a little bit. So, the Eagles need to find. That's the one thing they don't really have now. Depending on what happens to Jack Driscoll, if Driscoll starts, they definitely don't have that guy. They just don't have that one guy, that swing offensive lineman there. They don't know who that guy would be right now.
Yeah, and just to give everybody an example of what level of college he's playing football at, it's not Division III, it's not Division II, obviously not Division I. He's at NAIA.
Oh wow,
that's what Benedictine College is, an NAIA school, which is that's about as small as it can be for any type of college level competition. Isn't there an Okorafor who plays offensive line for the Steelers? Chike?
Yes, yeah, he's there,
right?
Right tackle, yes.
Yeah. Interesting. But he is 6'6". He is 320. It is, listen, it's hard to find a guy who is ever going to have more of an uphill climb than Jordan Mailata did, because Jordan didn't even play football. But I mean, that guy was such an athletic freak of nature. However, coming from an NAIA school, playing at Benedictine, playing at 3 other schools before that, you're right, he's got some experience there, but this would be this would be sort of yet another huge feather in the cap of Jeff Stoutland if he can get this guy into some kind of NFL form.
Let's put it this way: if he could make their practice squad, right? If he could be on their practice squad and spend 2 or 3 years let's say 2 years there, and then get on the field at 26 years old, be one of their backups. It's a win. You're just looking for. He's a trades player. He's a little older, but he's a trades player. And look, give the kid credit for perseverance. How was it? 6 schools, 5 schools?
It's a lot of schools, man. And the thing is, it's not like they're all next to each other either. Man.
Yeah.
This guy's a well-traveled guy.
Yeah.
All right. So I just wanted to get through him. The other
Sure.
rookie free agent that we haven't discussed, we'll get to when we look at the defensive depth chart. Reminder, it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over 5 million in gifts and prizes. So be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. I got you know me, I got an August birthday, Adam. I don't know what the birthday bar is yet. I'm probably going to have to check that out, see what kind of perks come, right? Your birthday's passed this year already.
Yeah, we're visiting those soon. I know we're going to be visiting.
We are. I'll invite you to my birthday at the birthday bar.
Oh, nice.
At Ocean Casino Resort.
There you go.
The exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. All right, let us take a look at this defensive roster now that we've got all the signings and the draft picks in. Say it again.
Let's go inside and try to figure this out. Yeah, it's interesting because there's not a lot of change in offense, but on defense there are going to be a minimum of 5 new starters. So obviously from the Super Bowl team, it's not always good, but it's not like they don't have players who could. Obviously compete for it and do well. So how do you see this thing? Are you, as you evaluate this defense, what do you have concerns? I guess better way to phrase it. Do you have concerns?
Well, let's start up front. Do I have concerns? Yes. There's two concerns that sort of fold into each other. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. My concerns about them come from different reasons, but it's the same concern, and that's neither of them played a whole lot of snaps at the college level because they were a part of such a deep rotation at Georgia, you know, for different, again, Jalen Carter, part of a rotation. Jordan Davis, yes, part of a rotation, but also struggles to play a certain number of snaps in a row because of his weight. Now, conditioning is going to be very key for him. It's also going to be key for Jalen Carter. And Nick Sirianni, I thought, was very honest and upfront about his need everybody's need. You know, he was asked after the rookie camp about the conditioning of the rookies. And he said, no, none of them are in good football shape. He's like, that's what this camp is for. They've all been, you know, doing the wine and dine route at everybody's top 30 visits. They're on airplanes. They're not eating well. I mean, yeah, a lot of them were training for the 40 and the combine. But once that's done, they just start living the hotel life and living out of suitcases and eating McDonald's and who knows what, right? So they're not all in shape. But that applies to everybody. But we already know that Jalen Carter at his pro day wasn't in shape. Like most guys, at least are practicing for their pro day and 40 and are well conditioned. So I would say, you know, week 1, Adam, like to 1, 2, 3, 4, you're trying to get off to a good start. But can you get Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter on the field enough so that they can make their impact? Because the drop off then is guys like Kentavious Street and Marlon Tuipulotu, and you know, I don't know who their nose tackle backup will be right now. I still think that they'll probably address that, don't you think, before training camp?
Well, okay. So on that, I would say this: Tuipulotu is coming off of an injury. He had surgery, I believe. Might have been a knee. I don't remember exactly. So he's coming off an injury. He didn't really play last season. So other than Noah Ellis, who's obviously a run stopper,
I forgot they have Noah Ellis. So they do have technically right now a backup nose tackle. Yes.
What do we say? Cankles?
He does.
Folks, if you've ever seen, I don't know, any of you guys were able to go to training camp, if you saw him on the field, he's all ankles and calves. It's just, they're huge.
He kind of looks like a wrestler because wrestlers have that too.
Yeah, sure. It's a good way to say it. So you're right. They don't really have a backup nose right now. Street is more of a 3 technique. Williams is more of a 3. Tuipulotu is a nose, I guess, right? or can you do both?
Who, Street?
No, Tui Pelotu.
Well, they when they drafted him, they felt that he had some ability to play the nose, like a small nose, because he was strong, and they thought he could shed. He did at USC play some nose, but I can't say that we've seen a really effective nose. I can't say we've seen Marlon Tuipulotu play really well in any time being an Eagle. I mean, he hasn't been awful, but he just hasn't played great.
Really.
Yeah, he hasn't been much of a contributor, especially against the run.
You make a good point. It's something that will, as we go inside both sides of the ball here, that's something we had not even talked about. Who's the backup nose? Because here's the thing. Depending on what we know, there are going to be some differences between the former defense coordinator Gannon and this guy, because not everyone runs the exact same defense in terms of Fangio speak. They all run their own. They run Fangio, but they have their own touch with it. So the question is how much 5-1 are they going to play? How much of a nose is going to play? Is it just going to be rundowns? We know that the Eagles saw when they drafted Jordan Davis, later in Davis's career, might be third or fourth year. Once the hope is that they know by year 3 he's definitely going to be the guy to be a long time. He's in good shape, and then you start to see some pass rush from him. But right now he's really a nose. So to me, it's a 4 or 5 man rotation. Cox obviously this should be it for him. Should be, can't say definitely, but this should be. It's on a 1-year deal anyway. Carter, we have to see what kind of shape he's in. Davis, we were told, we put this out weeks ago, that he really looked good in their all-season program. In terms of weight is down, looks good. We'll see what the stamina's like. That's a part of it. Milton Williams has been a great story as a third D tackle. Kentavious Street, as you mentioned. That's got some depth there. Now, how good the depth is, they have to get on the field first. So the question is, let's throw this back to you before we get to defensive end. What's the potential rotation going to be?
Well, hard to say right now, but I would think on season opener, if things go to plans, Davis is your nose in the 5-5-2 front. He's going to be flanked by Cox and Carter. Those would be your 3 and 5 techniques. So, or 4 eyes, however they want to call it. So that's line your first line. Now, I think the question is, if a team has some success, right, moving the ball, they run a little hurry, whatever, and they run 7-8 plays in a row, they get a couple first downs, and Eagles got to go from their alpha line to their Bravo line. Who comes in to play to spell Davis? I'm fine with Milton Williams right there. He'll come in and give you some snaps. He's good. We like Milton Williams. We think he's done a good job as a rotational interior rusher. But then you're looking at Kentavious Street, Milton Williams, some backup nose, whether it's Tuipulotu or Ellis or whoever. I don't know. It doesn't. There's a lot of questions that are gonna have to be answered between now and then.
Well, here's what. So you've got Cox, Carter backing him up. You got Davis. They'll figure out in training camp through the preseason who the backup for Davis will be. Kentavious Street, it would stun me if he doesn't make it. He's got enough ability. He's got explosion, short area, got a little pass rush in him. He's just a good football player.
Yeah, solid football player. Come in and give what you need, but you don't want him playing like 50 to 60% of the snaps.
Sure. But I could certainly see 30% of the snaps. And then Moro Ojomo's there. We didn't mention.
Glad you brought him up. Go ahead.
Okay. So, but the question is, there's so many guys. I forgot to mention him because I just don't know where. He's certainly not a nose because he's smaller. But can you really keep 6? I know Milton Williams will certainly get snaps at the end where they're very late in depth. Can they keep 60 tackles?
Well, that's sort of one of the things that it might be dictated by the level of competition. Ojomo, we gave our scouting report on him. I will say, since the last time we talked about him, people I've spoke to think for the talent, the value is what did they get him in the 7th round?
Yeah.
People I spoke to had him higher than a 7th round pick. They think he's got really good motor and was one of Texas's better interior pass rushers last year. So to get him in the 7th round was good value. People like his interior burst. Now he's an interesting cat. We brought up that, from a personality standpoint, he's going to be an interesting guy that for in that locker room, especially with all those veterans, right?
Oh,
so we'll see how that goes.
So wait, you said on the last what's he speak his mind or something? What did you
Yeah,
hear?
he's just apparently just likes to debate people, likes to have spirited conversations, and that aren't always about football.
Oh,
Like, and some people would say like you kind of come off as a know-it-all, or maybe you're an arrogant guy because
all right.
that who listen, this could be the biggest nothing burger ever because a lot of people are strong personalities, or it could be that when you're a rookie seventh rounder and you're trying to tell Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, you're gonna find out real quick that they got nothing for you.
Well, Greg Cosell really liked him. Boy, Greg
Yes.
really lit up on that show, or
Yeah.
that show we did with him last week. So that was interesting. I didn't, because we rarely talk to Greg before we do the show. We just said here he always wants to know who we're going to talk about. Actually, I shouldn't say it. He would like to know, but he says it doesn't really matter unless there were like 4 or 5 players he had not seen of like the 400 players, whatever amount of players were available for the draft.
Mhm.
Greg watched more tape this year than he did in his whole career, and there were like 4 or 5 players. We said, "Hey, we want to talk about these guys." He says, "Hey, I need a week. I haven't seen these guys yet." And then he would wind up watching them. But Ojomo, yeah, boy, that was a surprise when he said how much he liked him. So that was a good story.
Andrew Checo also was a fan of that pick. He
Okay.
thought he had a higher grade on than 7th as well.
Good.
So yeah, from a talent standpoint, of course, that's just from a tape watching standpoint.
Yeah, but
we'll
look,
see.
that's good. The kid's got upside. Maybe he does push for roster spot again. Training camp's going to tell us everything in preseason. And in
100%.
fact, if he puts great tape together, that's when teams hate when you play a guy a UDFA or a 7th rounder, the guy tears it up, and he's going to have to play because you're not going to play the veterans.
Mhm.
And then he kicks ass in that last preseason game. You go, oh, boy, we got a tough call here.
Yeah,
You don't want to waive him because you get claimed.
that is true. So it should be sort of a nice jockey of competition between Contavious Street, Marlon Tuipulotu, and Moro Ojomo, I would think. Now, maybe 2 of those 3 make it. I'm not saying only one. It could be 2 of those 3.
And one thing we'll look at, I don't know how much we'll be able to tell at OTS, but certainly when we go to training camp, we're going to look at seeing how they deploy just in their, as you were talking about, their A and their B units on the defensive line, how they deploy them.
Yeah,
we know they're an odd man front team. That's not going to change. But again, it's like, what's the depth chart look like? Because they've got some upside depth. Whereas when we go to DN right now, they just don't have the depth. But what helps them is Milt Williams can line up at end. He has lined up in, and he's certainly going to do that again. The question is how many snaps. So when we go to DN here, you got Sweat, you got Brandon Graham in his part-time role. Barnett's going to be on the team. That's their plan as of now. Come back from the ACL injury. Janoris Robinson, I know they really want to look at him because he's long. Teron Jackson, who was cut last year, came back. And Matt Leo, who's Mr. Training Camp. Is this his 4th year? Is that right? 4th year? No.
I believe so. Feels like 7.
I know. It feels like. So they just don't have the quality of depth here. This is why Milton Williams is going to have to line up at DN. Getting him at DN for whatever it's 10 snaps or 20 snaps a game is certainly going to help them.
Well, you also have your strong side linebacker is in a sense a defensive end too.
Yeah.
So
as Greg said, he goes, Josh Sweat's a D lineman. He goes, he didn't want to. It really bothers him. Greg, he goes, Josh Sweat's a D lineman. He's a D end. He's done it. He goes, it bothers him when you talk about Sweat as a linebacker. He thinks it's funny.
Or an overhang player.
Fired up about it. He's a passion. He's an end rusher. He's not.
He is.
He's a D end. I was like, all right.
All right. So speaking of, that's a good transition to D end. At defensive end, they have Josh Sweat. They have Brandon Graham back for another year. Derek Barnett still on the team, amazingly. And then a couple of guys in Janoris Robinson and Teron Jackson, who Teron, by the way, has played some of that hybrid stand-up linebacker as well. Sam linebacker on overhang type player, along with, as you mentioned, Matt Leo, who is not an overhang player.
Right. So here's the question. As I said, Barnett's come back from ACL. We have to see. We've heard they're expecting him to be on the team this season. And Graham's got his part-time role, and he's great at it. Because they will play some 4-man front. They did last season, not a lot, but they did. Will Nolan Smith line up at end? I would say yes. As not a lot, he's smaller, but it's like he hasn't done it before. And quite frankly, they just don't have the depth at the end. And at some point, they're going to have to find someone else to line up there.
Yeah, did they lose somebody? Now that I think about it, though. They didn't really lose at the end. I mean, again,
Well,
I
Milton
feel like
Williams, again, as I said earlier, Milton Williams will certainly line up there.
right, but I'm saying that like this is the same set of defensive ends that they had last year. Sweat, Graham, Barnett got hurt, so they had a different number 3 D end who was it was Teron Jackson for some of the season. Then they wound up getting released, but because their Sam linebacker is a pass rusher, right, or an overhang player, it's not like you need 5 great. What you need is 4 to you need 6 good pass rushers because then you can get creative, move guys inside and outside, right? So Sweat, Graham, obviously Hassan Reddick, 3 right there. Cox 4. Nolan Smith should be in the mix as a backup pass rusher 5. Barnett 6. I mean, I think they'll be okay as far as you need your sort of quote unquote D end, Adam, like right in a 4-man front when you're trying to rush the passer. So I think they'll be all right there.
No, the reason why I bring it up is because Graham is 35. Yes, it was incredible what he did last season. Teron Jackson done nothing. Matt Leo won't be on the team this fall. And Janoris Robinson, they just don't know anything about him. I know they're really excited to get a look at him because of the measurables and the upside. But again, he's a guy who hasn't played.
Mm-hmm.
So really you've got it's Sweat and it's Graham and just 4 guys. Now I'm including Barnett. And then as you said, they've got like the Kyron Johnson's really, again, he's too small. Patrick Johnson is really a Sam linebacker. Nolan Smith could do both because he's played the end before, but he's at least he's at minimum he's a Sam linebacker. It's just I would like them. I wish they'd have one more guy, but they're clearly depending on Barnett. That to me would be pretty obvious. They must think his rehab's going pretty good.
Well, you remember when he went down, you remember who they replaced him with?
Who?
It was Robert Quinn. That's the guy that they lost. I couldn't think of.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as we've knocked Derek Barnett, he has to give you at least what you got from Robert Quinn last year, which is almost nothing, right? I mean, just by, as long as he's not out for the year. And even if he is, I'm not sure it's yeah. But no, I mean, as long as he lines up and gives you 8 snaps a game,
Right. If you could just give them 15 to 20 snaps, that's all they need because it's Sweat and Graham, Barnett, and they'll get a little bit of somebody else. But again, probably Nolan Smith. They'll mix and match it. I'm really excited because Desai's only being a D coordinator for 1 year, and I was with another team. Though he's running Fangio, it was completely different players. So I'm interested to see how he does it. And so those are the edge rushers. And then, well, obviously at strong side, you've got Reddick, Smith, Patrick Johnson, who you mentioned, and Kyron Johnson. And Kyron Johnson, man,
he might wind up proving to be just a little bit too short for because he does have that edge explosion, but he's not exactly, tall or huge or long-limbed or anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to judge a guy after 1 year when the Eagles were number 1 in the league in sacks and almost in franchise history. So it's not like he had an opportunity to go out there and showcase himself, but he was a special teamer, and we know special teams wasn't very good for most of the year. But I just don't know.
Well, right. He's their fastest special teams player, and their coverage did improve later. But as you said, overall, still wasn't good enough. But because of Nolan Smith, it's going to crush Kyron Johnson's chance and Patrick Johnson's chance probably to get on the field very much. Yeah. But again, what we're looking, what we'll be looking for is how they deploy Nolan Smith. Cannot wait to see him on the field. The Eagles are going to. My gut feeling is the Eagles are going to be right, and the other teams are going to be wrong about letting him drop to 30. That to me should not have happened. You and I know we heard from other teams. Tweener, is he DN? Is he a stand-up outside linebacker? Yes. Is he how are you going to deploy him? And the funny thing is, people make fun. Oh, he's only 238. Well, he was actually a pretty good run defender.
Yes.
So what the hell's with these teams?
I would say this, Adam, just based on feedback I've gotten on why he teams viewed him as a certain way. I think you're right that the Eagles might wind up being right, but they're also adding him to a mix where they have 5 or 6 guys that can all rush the passer, including a guy in Hassan Reddick who literally is sort of his projection. If a different team had taken him, like say 13th or 14th, like the Patriots, then he'd probably be have to be among their top 2 pass rushers. And if he needs to be refined, which is some of the feedback that we got on, I don't know that he's ready to just already be one of the top 2 pass rushers on the
Sure.
team. So,
I
you're
agree.
right. He would have been in a not a great situation though. And with the Eagles, I think he flourishes because, like Derek Barnett as a rookie, right? Derek Barnett as a rookie was at his best because he had pass rushers all around him, from BG to Chris Long to Fletcher Cox. I mean, he was just able to get in there, and they had Jernigan. I mean, they had tons of guys, Vinny Curry. So he just was able to like feast off of being around such a great room. And I think that that's going to benefit Nolan Smith as he sort of develops and refines his game.
Sure. And then just add to that, over time, over the next 3 to 4 years, you could see him line up as a joker, just move him around, create matchups. That's when you get to see how creative Desai is, because you don't want to run such a static defense. Yes, their pass rush is ridiculously great last year, but you saw the turnover numbers when Gardner Johnson got hurt, where their turnover numbers were not quite as good.
Right.
And remember we were saying when they started getting a ridiculous amount of turnovers, we're like, this is just not gonna continue. Now, I think obviously Gardner Johnson getting hurt didn't help, but man, if you can continue to get pressure as you were talking about with this group, we'll see how Edmonds and City, we'll get to those guys in a minute, the secondary, but pressure is pressure, man. If you can get that, you're going to eventually get turnover.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the middle of the defense. We'll talk about the inside, the coverage linebackers, the stack linebackers. First, we're going to pause real quick to hear a word from some of our great sponsors. All right, every year we have this discussion about linebackers, Adam, and every year it's like we got a bunch of different names to talk about. And, there was a point last year where you and I were like, hey, man, this whole Marcus Epps and who's the kid that they signed? Why can't I think of his name, from the Chargers last year?
Kaiser White.
Kaiser White. We looked at each other and we're like, this little pair is going to work out pretty good, right? They might be Eagles for a couple years. But here we are just a couple months later, and we're talking about literally a new set of linebackers once again.
I'll say this with Kaiser White. He was really, really good for at least half the season. Then his play waned a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Or he got kind of found out,
Maybe so. But it still was a situation where if they really wanted him back, they would have offered. But, he moved on, and he's now with Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. And the Eagles are just not, they're just saying you can't pay everybody. And they were not going to pay him $5 million a year. They just were not.
Right.
Good for him. Nice guy.
Yeah.
Good story from the area. And you got $6 million fully guaranteed at signing. It's a heck of a contract. It's a good.
Yeah, it wasn't that much less than what that TJ Edwards got. And TJ Edwards had a way better year.
Yeah, I know. And TJ, I know, I think you noted this because he's from the Chicago area. In fact, TJ Edwards' full guaranteed signing was really is a little bit more than White's, but not much more. You're right. Good call. Not much.
I tell you, there are certain things that I've come to really understand about this league. If you're a linebacker in this day and age, and you don't run a 4.5 40, right, or better, it almost doesn't matter how good of a year you had or what your instincts are. I mean, they're just really looking for guys who are light and can run, because Kaiser White did not have as good of a year as TJ Edwards, but he can run with anybody. He runs well, right? And he was drafted also. Wasn't he a 4th round pick of the Chargers at one point?
I looked that up, but he's been, he's a former safety. Yeah, he was correct. 2018.
Yeah. There's when you're a rookie free agent who does really well, there's a couple that you and I know of who are doing really well and will be coming up on contract soon. Teams always try to sort of remind you that you're a rookie free agent. Like very rarely do those guys just, even no matter how good they are, get that huge payday that they're looking for right off the bat, because they are always the rookie free agent. It's like a team mentality. I've seen it with a lot of different teams, that they almost hold it against you. Or it's like they no matter how well you play, they won't believe in you to a point where they're going to make you, the highest paid at your position or among them, even if you're really good.
And
So,
look look at Austin Eckler. I know this is a little bit extreme.
No, it's a great example right there.
So ridiculous the way the Chargers are treating him. I get it. It's running back, class guy. Could not do. I mean, the guy's one of the best players in the league at his position. He signed an undervalued deal when he signed an extension, and he asked to be traded. They couldn't find anyone who would take him because he wants a new deal. And yeah, you're right, man. It's a tough business, man. But anyway,
who's the safety from Washington who's pretty good? Curl, right?
Yeah, he was drafted.
He was drafted, but he was a very low pick, wasn't he? Like a 6th rounder or something like that. 7th round pick. All right, he's played really well. Be very interesting to see if he gets paid like some of the higher. He's arguably one of the better safeties in the NFL. Maybe not top 3, but he's one of the better safeties. And for Washington, he's been a lifesaver. But we'll see what they wind up doing. It's just like I said, when you're a day 3 guy or an undrafted guy, it's like really hard, man. All right.
Yeah, there are very rare instances where a 6th or 7th rounder, other than Tom Brady, although he took undervalued deals, like blows it up after his first contract, like just signs a huge extension.
Right.
But yeah, that's an interesting situation. So yeah, we're on the inside. We'll finish off the backers here.
Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, obviously Dean, barring something highly unforeseen, it would be really crazy if he doesn't start because there are 2 inside backer defense. Dean, Morrow, Nick Morrow, the projected starters. Ben Summerlin, who we talked about the last show, was a tackling guy in college. Christian Ellis, who played late last season, but he's more of a special teamer, but he'll have a chance to get some snaps. And then Davion Taylor, I can't imagine he'll be on the team this season. It would be hard for him to bring him back. He's actually, no, they cut him, brought him back. He's got a new deal. And Sean Bradley, special teams only. So they've gotten away with having like no depth really at inside linebacker because it's just the way they do things. Because Edwards was durable, so was Kaiser White.
How many linebackers did they have last year? It was Kaiser White and Edwards were the starters. Bradley was on the team because he was a special team all year long. Ellis didn't start with the team. Did they really only have just 3 guys for most of the year?
Last year they had, I won't tell you.
Because like you said, they stayed very healthy. So I don't really remember anybody other than Edwards or White having to play a whole lot of snaps, at stack linebacker.
4 guys. You're right. No, it was Nakobe Dean was the insurance policy.
Oh, of course, Dean. I forgot to mention Dean, right?
Yeah, but no, you're right. It was Kaiser, White, and Edwards. They just weren't getting hurt. Bradley never would play on defense, barring something would have to happen.
Right.
And Nakobe was the emergency. He was the insurance policy, and that was it. Yeah.
And you look at him now, and it's like, all right, I guess Dean and Morrow would be the starters, and again, Morrow iffy, but after that, if they're going to keep 4, like who are you keep? Like Christian Ellis, Davion Taylor, Sean Bradley, and Vance. Is Van Sumeren the one that they gave the most amount of money to, Adam?
I don't have all their contracts. I know they gave him a healthy bonus.
I don't know. Even if he makes it, I mean, it's linebacker. What I don't know why I'm surprised to be having this conversation.
They're disposable players for them. They just don't mean a lot to them. The inside backers,
right?
The projection is Dean. Dean obviously was a great value, but we know why. There were some issues with his body type. He's smaller. He's a guy that we want to see if they'll use him as a blitzer. Because now that he's projected to start. Morrow's the guy that Paul Gunther, the former Raiders D coordinator, came on our show late last year, and explained how his whole story was amazing. And by his 3rd year, they gave him the green dot to wear. He was a leader on defense. Great kid, amazing background. You mentioned Van Sumeren, and then Christian Ellis to me is a guy they wanted. They love his speed. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't make it. But as you said, I see them only keeping 4 guys, and Van Sumeren and Ellis figured to be the backups.
I mean, the key to this whole equation is Nakobe Dean. If he's as good as he's supposed to be and plays at a TJ Edwards or even better level, which he, obviously being a 3rd round pick, that's expected and would be good. But even if he does, I still think there's sort of a drop off from what you got last year with this Dean Kaiser White tandem to, Edwards and Kaiser White tandem to Dean and whoever, whether it's Morrow, whether it's Ellis, whether it's, I don't know, who else could it be?
But if Dean, because he can blitz, remember, he was a phenomenal player at Georgia. In fact, the head coach, Kirby Smart, I'm told, called him the smartest player ever coached.
Right.
So now, does that mean he's going to be a great pro? No, that's college football. This is the pros here, but we know he's really smart. But again, this is a big step up. The first year starting, so we'll see. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Well, I'm interested to see what his weight is. See if he can get up to 230. That's something they'll have to monitor. But Christian Ellis is a guy I know they want to take a bigger look at in this offseason. Because man, the kid can run, and he put some good tape together in his limited playing time.
Yeah, his ability to blitz N'Kobe Dean's is a very big bonus, but it doesn't really alleviate my overall concern about the position, because my concern about the position right now is that it's very light and can get run on, especially if those guys aren't kept clean. And I don't feel great about this new personnel here being able to. I mean, I think people, I guess people realize, but TJ Edwards played really well. I know there were times he got beaten coverage, and I know some of his bad time moments stand out, but he really played, especially when they needed to tighten up against the run after that Washington debacle. I mean, he made some really big plays, and he was just, because he was steady. He was constant. He could get to the ball. He could make the tackles. And so, Kaiser White, like you said, in the first half of the season, he was breaking up passes to tight ends. He was everywhere. They were really instrumental. And you're right that the Eagles, the team sees this as fungible, disposable parts, but it doesn't mean the parts that they add in are going to play as better than the ones that came out. So big part of their defense. Well, hey, listen, I still think this is a position that Howie Roseman tries to upgrade before their first game. I would not be shocked.
Look, here's the good thing, man. It is a buyer's market. There are so many inside backers out there who are actually guys who've been started for a long time. So yeah, that where they would have leverage, but they'll take a look. You make a really good point though. They're really small. They're much smaller than inside backer, like physically smaller, not as far as height, but weight.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So that's it. We did strong side guys, the two inside guys. So we'll get to D-backs.
Yeah, we will get into the D-backs in a second. First, we're going to remind you to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience. They're enhancing your experience, everybody's experience, with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com, on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. Let's pause real quick to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. And of course, if you have a chance to listen and subscribe to the Powder Blue Podcast, the Phillies podcast, myself, Frank Close, it's on the Cheesesteaks and Change-Ups Network on all major podcast platforms. So check that out. You probably have to Google either Powder Blue Podcast or Cheesesteaks and Change-Ups, and you will find Frank Close and I in our podcast. Really appreciate it if you subscribe.
On your Twitter, is it at Powder Blue Phils?
At Powder Blue Phils, I believe, is the Twitter handle there.
Okay, cool.
All right. Let us talk about this back end of the defense. Let's start with safety, Adam.
Yeah, so let's go inside what it looks like. So they'll play their split safety look as we understand it. They'll do that. It's just one personal source said to me with Sidney Brown, yes, it's true. He really was not asked to cover very much. Yes, he was mostly a box player. But again, it's what he was asked to do. It doesn't mean he can't play back. It doesn't mean he can't cover a slot receiver. He just was not asked to do it. His former teammate, Tertavius Martin, was their coverage guy. That's why he went higher. He was a really good player. Brown dropped to the third because you can only go by the tape. And the tape showed you that he mostly lined up in the box, knifed in there to blow plays, blow up a play, and he wasn't asked to cover other than tight ends up front. So, okay, so he's going to do more of the coverage. Doesn't mean he can't do it. So that's something that they're going to have to work on with him. But apparently, from what I've heard, he's an extremely willing learner, super coachable, and he's a guy who's got great athletic skill. It's just he wasn't asked to use it enough. But the Eagles and other teams thought, based on the Senior Bowl, certain tape from over his career. If you go farther back, you see some things. And the measurables are really good, the athletic stuff, the combine, and you'll go from there. But again, this is a big step up because he's going to have to do things he wasn't asked to do very much.
I wonder, Adam, if Sean Desai will look at his personnel and think to play a little bit more two-man coverage this year, which is two deep safeties with man underneath, and then use Justin Evans as a third safety, like your second interior defender. You have Avonte Maddox on the inside against a slot receiver, Evans on the inside against a tight end if they think he can run with the tight end, and then you're obviously your corners on the perimeter, and then you can play your man match scheme underneath a two shell look. Because I don't like you said, I don't know if Sidney Brown. Well, I mean, I can say I don't know. We're pretty sure Sidney Brown's not going to give you the type of coverage and instincts and playmaking that CJ Gardner-Johnson gave you, because CJ was really a nickel corner by trade, whereas Sidney Brown is a safety by trade. He'll make most of his plays from a safety position, not necessarily a coverage position. So I don't know. It just, to me, if you want to alleviate Edmonds and Brown from having to do too much of that, you can just play a lot of two shell coverages and put Evans in, because Evans is supposed to be able to run with these guys if he's healthy, right?
Yeah, he did some nickel last year because they had some guys hurt. But again, over time, over the first couple of years, you're going to see him gradually. He should do more coverage. Because people are trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the coverage safety? Well, neither are great at it. Evans had to do it. He covered tight ends. We noted this when they signed him, based on our personal source said, yeah, he definitely can cover tight ends. He's done it. He's not great in coverage. He's okay. There's just not on this roster. There's not really a proven coverage safety. Like, that's something they're going to have to figure out in training camp. Who's more comfortable at it? They have a general idea, but you're not really going to know until you get to training camp and get through by mid to late August. You have a better idea. So then, of course, there's Blankenship. Levon Wallace in the last year's deal. So here's the way it looks right now: Edmonds, Brown, Evans, Blankenship are definitely making the team.
Mm-hmm.
I should say Evans is not definitely making. He should.
But
that should be the four. Then the Sasha will be on the team for specials. They got Tristan McCullum, who we were told initially would probably play safety, not corner, but can play corner. He's a height, weight, speed guy. They got to take a look at him. And then Sasha, and we mentioned for specials. So,
well, it's funny you think Sasha would make it over to Wallace, because I thought so too last year, but Wallace was the one that wound up making the 53, and Sasha was on the practice squad. They elevated him a couple of times, but I don't know. They saw something in Wallace at times, and there were certain times where he played okay, but they have to use him the right way, closer to the line of scrimmage.
Well, with Evans being there, you're adding Edmonds, Brown. We know obviously they lost two safeties, the two starters, but they got Edmonds, Brown, and Evans are new. Blankenship's back. The question is, do they keep Sasha just for specials? Cut him, do what you were talking, play the roster tango, just bring them up, elevate them on game day. And we'll learn closer to the season if they're going to keep those rules last year, what kind of rules they're going to have for call-ups. Or they just keep Wallace as the fifth, and he'll just be the insurance because he has experience. But to me, obviously, Blankenship's ahead of him.
Yeah.
And honestly, if they have those top four guys on the roster, do you really need to dress a fifth for game day?
Probably not. No.
Right.
So that's
but he can make it though as an insurance policy.
Yeah.
But see,
it's funny, they lost two safeties, but they replaced three. You're right. That's
what I was saying. But here's another thought. See, this is where it gets tricky for those of you who like to do your own 53-man roster. See, if they go heavy on D line, if they keep 10 defensive linemen, which is not ideal, but if they keep 6 defensive tackles and 4 ends, that's 10.
Right.
Or if they keep 9, you got 9 defensive linemen, probably no more than 4 inside backers. That's 13. You got probably 3 strong side linebackers, Smith, Reddick, and Patrick Johnson, or Kyron Johnson or Patrick Johnson. Kyron only play specials.
Mm-hmm.
There's another 3, 4 safeties, and then we're going to get corner to finish this out, which is really interesting because they all of a sudden they've got a lot of young players there, which is always good.
Yeah,
but not really proven. So there's a numbers game here. This is the battles for the first time in many years, man. There are going to be some serious training camp battles.
100%. All right, let's move on to corner, because you'll see some bottom roster battles here going on. Obviously, at the top of the roster, it's pretty set. James Bradbury, Darius Slay. I know Avonte Maddox is. This is a big year for him, don't you think? I mean, if he doesn't stay healthy, it's now year 3 of that extension, or year 2 or 3 of that extension. It's not a position that the Eagles can't feel like they can replace easily. I just think he's got to stay healthy and be productive this year.
His cap
100%.
number. This is a really interesting thing you bring up here.
Mhm.
His cap number, which is only $4 million this season, it skyrockets to $10.1 million in 24, which is the last year of his deal.
But only if he's on the roster, right?
Well, no, his cap number, if he's on there now, they would save his salary of $6.85 million is not guaranteed.
That's a
The
lot.
guarantees, the guarantees are out of his contract after the season.
Mm.
So, boy, he better stay healthy. Now, you make a really good point. Now, it's not like right now. Look, he's a slot corner. He's one of the better ones. So the question is, can they find someone over that time who could play the slot? Ringo's a project. He's a 4th rounder who's lightweight speed guy who's just got to develop. They're going to bring him along slowly. Rudy Williams is on a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Zach McPherson can play inside or outside. He's been more of an outside guy who's really hasn't played much. He's in his 3rd year or his 4-year deal. We mentioned Josiah Scott as a backup slot. Didn't work for him last year at all. He didn't play well. And then you got guys who are in the super back end of the roster who are long shots to make it. Like Josh Jobe made it last year. He just didn't play. He was on the roster. Mario Butch did not. Eli Ricks is an undrafted free agent. Mekhi Gardner is an undrafted free agent who's got length like Ricks. So the question to you would be, is there a spot open for any of these guys?
1, 2, 3. They usually keep 5 corners, if I'm not mistaken. This is an important year for Zach McPherson because he is literally the only guy I think they have right now who can challenge to be the backup slot. Greedy Williams is not built like a slot. For everything we've heard of about Ringo, same thing, tall, long corner, not necessarily a side to side. In the slot, you have to have that short area burst, that fluid hips, but we were told about Ringo, even Greg Cosell said it, is that, throttling down, not necessarily his best attribute because he's a taller, stiffer guy. So Josiah Scott, I mean, he had the chance last year. He did not perform well. Josh Jobe is a guy who is more of a corner who has safety ability than slot, I believe. So can Zach McPherson it's weird because if Zach McPherson doesn't make it on the team, who is the backup slot? Is it Josiah Scott again?
Well,
I don't know if they want to go that route.
McPherson will make it for specials, but you're right because Bradbury, Slay outside. Greedy Williams, unless he totally fails in training camp, will be the top backup outside corner.
Mm-hmm.
McPherson was really that guy last year, right?
Yeah.
And he just never got called upon because the other guy, the vet, stayed healthy.
Right.
They have a lot of players here, but there's definitely Bradbury, Slade, Maddox are 3. Williams is 4. McPherson's 5. Ringo has to make it that 6. These other guys can't. You're not keeping 7 corners. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
Could someone? The reason why I said this, could someone push McPherson off the team?
They'd have to be able to play the slot, don't you think? Because if Maddox goes down, they need a slot corner.
They got to go with McPherson over Josiah Scott this year because unless Josiah Scott has this amazing training camp and off season where he revives his career here as a backup slot.
Mm-hmm.
With Maddox's injury history, something's good. Like, okay, they got away with it with Bradbury and Slay. There's no question they got away with it. Now, Greedy Williams, they're counting on him to be that backup on the outside. But if Maddox gets hurt, which is based on his career, probably likely,
mm-hmm.
Who's that guy? Do you feel good about who can go in there? I don't know if they have that guy. You make a really good point because honestly, you could have 50 guys. They just don't have anyone.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with Eli Ricks, who I know, we're at this point of the podcast, we probably pissed off every single person who's emailed us telling us that Eli Ricks is going to be on the team. We're crazy, but even he, I don't think projects really as a slot receiver, or a slot corner. I mean, he's 6'2", right? So by the way, you can feel the Eli Ricks momentum already gaining among, people who are familiar with his background. This sort of feels like Trevon Grimes from a couple of years ago, where it's like people are emailing us. You guys are idiots thinking that Trevon Grimes is not going to make this team as the third receiver. And we're like, what? And then, the guy didn't even make it to training camp. I mean, like,
He got hurt, but
I know he got hurt, but he didn't even get, I'm sure he's been healthy. Yeah. I don't think he's on with any other team.
No, he hasn't flashed. He might be CFL. He never became their hope was that he'd make the team and they didn't expect him to play. They were just thinking like maybe if he could blow it up, he'd be a back end player. He was never going to be a third receiver. That was really, people said that.
Oh, I can find some emails. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
But look, in the end here, this is why it's taken so long to get to the show, folks. There's so many jobs open in terms of there's going to be a pecking order D tackle. There's going to be someone's going to push for a role at inside backer. Safety's got a lot of moving parts. They got to figure out what the depth chart is. We'll figure it out in training camp. We'll start to get an idea during the OTAs. At corner, the best part about this whole show is figuring out that this is why we do these shows, because we don't really know it until we get through it. They're going to have, to me, they really should, based on you bringing this up, they really should go get a veteran slot corner, but they may not agree with us. But to me, that might behoove them to get someone to compete for that backup slot job.
Now, they did sign a undrafted free agent that we didn't get to last podcast. His name is Mekhi Garner.
Yep.
And the skinny, was he an LSU kid? I forget where.
Correct.
Yes, yep. LSU kid, which is always, a good school to try to find a corner from.
Guess what? He's tall. He's 6'2".
It's amazing. Like the Eagles it's almost like they said, we are not going to sign a corner who's below 6'2" this year. I mean, or draft.
Right. We are going to find out because he's thick, 212
at
the combine, which 6'2" and 212. You don't find a lot of tall safeties, but we're going to look in to see if they might line him up at safety in training camp. Huge hands, 10 and 1/8. Long arms for a corner. 32 and a quarter is long for a corner. In fact, there's some offensive guards in the NFL are 32 and a quarter.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay. He's
a talented. Apparently, he's a talented kid, though. It's just, we'll see. I mean, you're right. He might be a tweener. Like, I don't know if he's an outside corner or a safety.
I mean, he didn't run great. I mean, 4.55 is not good enough for corner.
No.
But again, because he's long, you never really know. Well, he seemed to me like a Seahawks corner with the length. But man, that is, when you look at it, Greedy Williams is length. Ringo's got length. Over 6'1". This kid, Garner, McCollum.
Yep.
Was signed for the offseason. His brother's with the Bucks.
Well, it's a league of very tall, long-limbed wide receivers now, so it makes sense to be a league of tall, physical corners.
There you go.
All right, so that's an early look there at the defensive personnel after the signing of the rookie free agents and after the draft picks and then all the other moves. So we did offense last podcast. We now just rounded out with defense, and as we move forward, we'll pretty soon get to our 53-man projection, and of course, with the camps beginning, we'll have any news that comes out from those as well. As we have to remind you, the Eagles start camp later than anybody and end camp earlier than anybody. So that has been their unique formula, but they feel like it's been successful. It's hard to argue with the results of that, along with the shorter practices. So, but that's the case. It's not like the OTAs, man, used to be full of news and great stories, and it's just not like that anymore. But we will continue to do our best to provide you with anything that comes out.
Oh, we'll know by the end of OTAs. We'll let you know. We'll give you your OTA all-stars if there are any. Honestly, this is sometimes where it starts, particularly for lower end guys, where they really open some eyes, and then the club's excited to see what they look like in training camp. Sometimes it doesn't, because they're not in pads or anything. Sometimes it just doesn't match up, but sometimes these guys continue it. We'll see.
Awesome. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.